Good morning.
Morning, Gary. How are you?
Doing well, my friend. Let's start with just the latest news. I know you've got a piece, and of course, you and I both, everybody that knows Sal Sineri loves Coach Sal, and but his impact as a recruiter already being felt in the class of 2020 with Antoine Sampah, the number 1 ranked inside linebacker out of Virginia, who he was recruiting for Florida. You talked with him, and he just said, "Hey, Coach Sal going to Alabama, that's good for Alabama." So the impact of Sal Sineri, we'll see it on the field too with this defense, but he's probably what I would call an underrated recruiter because you don't hear his name brought up much when you talk about the top recruiters, but he certainly is a guy who, when he was at Alabama the first time or wherever he's been, has done a really good job in that area.
Yeah, I think he's one of the best recruiters that's out there that nobody knows about. People talk about a lot of these younger guys and they know some of these younger guys are a little bit more active on social media than Coach Sineri is, but I think he's done a tremendous job at pretty much everywhere he's been. And I talked to Antoine Sampah yesterday, and I was really just reaching out to him just to see if he had scheduled any visits to Alabama for the spring yet, and he said he hadn't. And then he kind of went on and started talking about Sal Sineri had already reached out to his high school coach, and they were going to set up something pretty soon. But said that he's had a really great relationship with Coach Sineri for a long time. One of his high school teammates played at Florida, was at Florida this past year, Kyrie Campbell, and said that he's been recruiting him, pretty much ever since he recruited Kyrie Campbell to Florida. So they've got an outstanding relationship. It certainly helps Alabama out, and Alabama was already, very high on his list. He visited Tuscaloosa a few times already. He was there back during the season, and said he can't wait to get back down there now. So, I think some of these hires are certainly going to be very beneficial. And you look at some of the guys they've brought on so far, and I think they've got some veteran coaches, but they've also got some veteran recruiters that are very well established throughout the country.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go with you on this next line of questioning is as they tweak the staff, and certainly there seems to be some emphasis or a lot of emphasis from Nick Saban to get more of a veteran staff with a more coaching experience on the field than what they had this past year. Even though they went 14-1, I think the feeling was maybe that staff wasn't as strong on the field as others that he's had. So all these guys. You follow him in recruiting. Charles Huff coming in. We've already talked about Sal Sineri, Kyle Flood, Charles Kelly, Steve Sarkisian, of course, and now expected to bring in the wide receivers coach, Holman Wiggins from Virginia Tech. Just talk about this staff, not from an on-the-field coaching standpoint, but how you think they'll be on the recruiting trail.
Well, I think they'll be all right. I mean, one thing that they do have behind them is the Alabama name and Nick Saban. So, they're certainly going to be able to recruit well, but these guys are coming in with great reputations. They're well established in different regions of the country, so it'll be interesting to see when all is said and done where these guys end up getting placed in terms of their recruiting areas. And we saw yesterday Charles Huff posted that he was back in the DMV, meaning the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So it looks like he's going to be recruiting that area for the Crimson Tide, and he's recruited that area for a long time. When he was at Penn State, that was his area, and did a tremendous job. So a lot of coaches, a lot of high school coaches, a lot of high school football players in that area know who he is. It'll be interesting to see where they end up putting Sal Sineri, because he also has some connections in the DMV area, but. I would kind of expect him to be more in the Carolinas. We may see him in the state of Florida a little bit. The same with Charles Kelly. May see him in the state of Florida. So, Kyle Flood probably, in my opinion, I think we'll probably see him, more so in the Northeast, in the New York, New Jersey area, because of his ties, up there. And being a head coach at Rutgers, I think we'll probably see him recruit that area. But I expect we won't see anything set in stone until after signing day. I think Alabama coaches, Nick Saban's probably, just trying to get these guys to go see their last few, targets in this year's recruiting class and let them meet, some of these guys for the first time. And obviously, guys like Sineri, Charles Kelly, they've been recruiting some of these guys already. So I'm sure they're going to meet with them again. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be really good for Alabama in terms of a lot of these guys being, well-established recruiters in the country coming in.
The second signing period, 2 weeks from today, Bone, and Alabama's already put together a class that's ranked number one at this point. They just do a little more work, and I think they pretty much have guaranteed themselves the number one class. But let's talk about guys that they want to shore up. These are guys that are committed to Alabama that have not yet signed. The latest on them, and Alabama might have other plans for a couple of these guys. I don't know, but let's run them down. Let's start with Chris Bogle, the outstanding outside linebacker, defensive end prospect from down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. A big commitment they picked up from him at one of the All-Star games. Now hanging on to him and getting him to sign looks like it's going to be, I won't say difficult, but there's still some work done here recruiting him as Miami and others are continuing to really go after this guy hard. Do you think he winds up signing with the Crimson Tide?
I do, but I definitely don't think it's over by a long shot. I think there's still some work to be done, and Alabama's going to have to heavily recruit him to keep him on board. And if they want to keep him on board, they're going to have to continue to make sure he feels like a top priority. And he played in the Polynesian Bowl this past weekend, and got back in late Sunday, and one of the first schools to go see him on Monday morning was Alabama. Joe Panunzio, Sineri, who actually recruited him for Florida, was they both went to go see him. So I think that helps a lot, and they'll go see him again next week at some point, before signing day. So I do think as of right now, I think Alabama's in good shape, but continuing to watch Miami until the end with him.
Byron Young, the defensive lineman out of West Jones High School in Laurel, Mississippi, a longtime Alabama commitment, but did not sign in the December signing period and continues to look around himself. I know this is a priority recruit for the Crimson Tide. What's the latest on him?
Well, he took an official visit to Ole Miss last weekend. He's going to be at Mississippi State this weekend, and then next weekend, final weekend before signing day, he's going to be going over to LSU. It's one of those situations where you feel like he's pretty solid, but that these other schools are pressing very hard for him, especially LSU. LSU's coming after him very strong. Mississippi State, really likes him a lot. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him in the end. In the end, I think he ends up sticking with Alabama. But, you always have to, kind of watch out with these schools that are, been heavily recruiting him, schools that he's visiting, these last few weekends. And the fact that he hasn't visited Alabama since December when he took his official visit, it's always tough to say, 100% he's going to stick. But Alabama certainly continues to make him feel like a top priority. He's been one of the first visits they've gone and seen every single week. He's definitely a guy that they want very bad in this class. They really want to sign two more defensive linemen in addition to the guys they signed in December, and he's certainly one of those guys they want to keep on board.
A lot of Bama fans concerned about the status of Keelan Robinson, the little all-purpose running back from St. John's in Washington, D.C. Didn't sign, obviously, in December. Now you got Mike Loxley, who was one of his primary recruiters at Maryland. This is a guy that, you've got Trey Sanders, but this is a guy who would bring a lot of versatility to that running back core, and I know Alabama would love to sign him. Where does that stand?
I think he sticks. I think, he hasn't really taken any visits this month. He's been pretty quiet, about, really anything. I haven't heard of any other coaches that have gone and seen him, which makes me think that he may have secretly signed with Alabama in December. And I know that's been a rumor pretty much ever since signing day in December that he secretly signed. Okay. But even though he has come out and said that he did not secretly sign. But I just think with the lack of visits and everything, I think he's pretty much locked in with Alabama at this time.
Good deal. Finally, Christian Williams, the cornerback out of Daphne, a long-time commitment, but there seems to be more thought process here in regards to him that it's whether or not Alabama actually winds up taking him. Now, he's got to keep his options open, but, do you think he is in this class, or do you think that he winds up signing with somebody else?
I think he ends up signing with someone else. Alabama signed 5 defensive backs in December. That's a big number right there. So as of right now, I think it's going to be probably tough for Alabama to sign another defensive back. He visited Miami this past weekend. He is currently scheduled to visit Alabama this weekend, but I've heard that that visit may end up getting canceled. So we'll keep an eye on that one over the course of the next few days. I think he's scheduled to visit Oregon next weekend. So, as of right now, and there's been some rumors that LSU was the favorite to land him. He ended up canceling an official visit to LSU a while ago. I guess 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, he canceled an official visit there. Hasn't rescheduled that trip. Now, I think there might be a possibility if he does cancel the official visit to Alabama this weekend, he goes down to LSU, and they could easily be in the mix for him. But as of right now, looking like Miami could be in the driver's seat for him.
Andrew Bone with us here for his weekly Bama football recruiting report here on the Gary Harris Show. He's on the Bud Light Hotline, powered by Adams Beverages. All right, let's get to the guys that Alabama's still recruiting, hoping to sign in February. And, of course, it's the weekly Ismail Sopsher update, the big defensive lineman out of Louisiana. What's the latest with him?
Well, nothing new. He's still, going to decide on National Signing Day. A lot of people think that it's Alabama LSU battle. He wants to get his brother a scholarship, to one of those schools, and LSU, Oregon, both those schools have extended his brother a scholarship. But it's starting to look like his brother's going to reclassify to the 2020 class. So may buy some time for a lot of these schools to try to figure things out with his brother. But it looks like he'll make his official visit to Alabama and LSU next week. He'll probably do one during midweek and then one during the weekend. I don't think he's made a final decision yet on that, but I think it could go either way. It wouldn't surprise me if he goes to LSU. Wouldn't surprise me if he goes to Alabama. Wouldn't surprise me if he goes to Oregon, because I just think it's just so far away from home that I just don't think he's going to go that far away. Texas A&M is still in the mix, but in the end, it's going to be between Alabama and LSU.
Another top defensive lineman that remains unsigned but committed is Nathan Pickering from Sineri, Mississippi to Mississippi State. But here's Charles Huff coming in to join the Alabama staff from Mississippi State. You have said that you think he continues to be open in regards to listening to other schools. Does Huff coming over help Alabama here? And is there a possibility that the Tide could still wind up making some hay with Nathan Pickering?
Well, there is some, there's some familiarity there with him, but there's also some familiarity there with South Sineri, who recruited Nathan Pickering for Florida. So I think that certainly helps Alabama a lot as well. So keep an eye on that. Pickering's kind of said from the last few, pretty much the last few months, that if there's one school that can flip me, it's Alabama. Just his relationship with the coaches there. His thoughts on the program, their development at the defensive line position, yada, yada, yada. He just really likes the program a lot. And, it's going to be big for him coming into Tuscaloosa next weekend, the final weekend before National Signing Day. Alabama making that final big push for him. He is going to visit Mississippi State this weekend. And, they're going to do probably everything they possibly can to make him want to be at Mississippi State, to make him decide to cancel that official visit to Alabama next weekend. So, we'll keep a pretty close eye on that and see if, something like that possibly happens. But Alabama, I think, feels pretty good that he's still going to visit, next weekend. And they'll make that final push for him when he comes in. All
right, what about the linebacker that for a long period of time we really felt like De La Salle linebacker Henry To'oTo'o was headed to Alabama, but with Tosh Lapoy leaving to go to the Browns, and Tennessee making up major ground there. I have read, for what it's worth, Bone, and that's why I want you to give us the latest. I have read on a couple of these recruiting sites that are handled by the Tennessee writers that Tennessee now is the leader, and they predict him to sign with the Vols.
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of just jumped to a conclusion as soon as Tosh left that he was going to Tennessee, and I do think Tennessee is very high on his list. I think they're probably in his top two. He visited there on January the 11th, and now he's going to visit Alabama this weekend. But Alabama's still Alabama to him. He said that. Pete Golding is the inside linebackers coach, which is the position that he expects to play. And Pete Golding and Tosh Lapoya have been recruiting him for a long time. Even though Tosh Lapoya was basically his area recruiter, and that's who he knew. Probably the best, but he is going to come in this weekend and have that official visit, sit down with Coach Saban and the rest of that coaching staff, and they're certainly going to put everything out there to make him feel like he's a top priority, and they're going to try to get him.
So, what is your prediction? And I know we're 2 weeks out, but you're on top of this. What's your prediction on Henry?
I think it's kind of a toss-up right now, in my opinion, just because he's got to come in for the official visit this weekend, and he is going to come in. We'll know a little bit more after this weekend. If Alabama feels good about it after this weekend, then yeah. But if they don't, then I think he'll end up going to Tennessee.
All right. Speaking of Alabama-Tennessee battles, and I know Alabama's had an incredible offensive line haul, and Evan Neal was their priority at tackle, but Darnell Wright is still out there, and Tennessee, of course, is heavily involved. Is Alabama still recruiting him, and would they like to add another offensive tackle in this class, if they could get one the quality of Darnell Wright?
Yeah, I don't think he's been in much communication with Alabama, which is kind of weird to me just because, I knew that Alabama was pretty much done at the offensive line position once the early signing period happened and Evan Neal jumped on board and they were able to get 5 guys. Not only 5 guys who signed early, but 5 guys who enrolled early as well. All 5 of those, their offensive line signees, have already enrolled at Alabama, which is huge. And, I'd heard that Alabama was pretty much done on the offensive line. And then, Darnell Wright's best relationship was with Brent Key. That's the guy that he knew the most, the guy who he had such a great relationship with. And there hasn't been much communication, but Alabama has been, speaking with Javon Shepard, a 4-star offensive lineman out of Texas, who's committed to Texas, who may be coming in for an official visit this weekend. So I thought that was kind of interesting that they were possibly bringing in him as opposed to Darnell Wright. So
okay.
We're keeping an eye on that one right now. But as in terms of Darnell Wright, I don't think he's going to end up. As of right now, it doesn't look like he's going to end up visiting Alabama.
Gotcha. All right, Bo. Before we wrap it up, anybody else out there that Alabama would like to sign in February that we haven't touched on?
Well, I think one name to keep an eye on is I'll name a couple guys. Daniel Humula is a 4-star linebacker who was the defensive MVP of the Polynesian Bowl. Very good inside linebacker out of California. He's going to come into Tuscaloosa on February the 1st weekend. So that's a name to keep an eye on, especially if Henry Tola ends up going to Tennessee. We could see Alabama make a really big push for Daniel Humula. Quayshawn Fuller is a 4-star defensive end out of Florida. Had an in-home visit a couple days ago with Nick Saban. He's committed to Florida State. He'll also be in Tuscaloosa on February the 1st. We keep talking. I've said so many times that Alabama wants to sign 2 defensive linemen, and they keep getting some more names that are going to come on campus. And Quayshawn Fuller, Jaquez Sorrells, the 4-star D lineman out of Largo High School in Florida. He'll be in Tuscaloosa next weekend. Another guy that's going to be in town actually this weekend is Jared Hunt out of New York. Tentatively scheduled. I think he's still planning on coming in this weekend. He has been, kind of one of those guys that emerged after his senior season. Alabama started recruiting him, and it looks like he'll probably make a trip to Tuscaloosa this weekend. But I think, as of right now, Alabama's just trying to keep Byron Young on board, and Ishmael Sopsher, Nathan Pickering, kind of their other top guys at the position, but they're certainly making some some other guys feel wanted, and in case those guys end up going elsewhere, they could possibly have a fallback plan.
Great stuff as always from Andrew Bone. Terrific update this week, just 2 weeks out from the second signing period. Bone, tell the listeners how they can get all the great information that you offer.
Well, please follow me on my Twitter handle at Andrew J. Bone. Also at BamaInsider.com, which is part of the Rivals.com network.
All right. Good to visit with Bone. We'll catch up with you again next week. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Thanks, Gary. Have a good one.